The Denver Broncos have made two very smart signings on the heels of their 13-11 win over the New York Jets. And I'm here to tell you on today's Broncos Breakdown episode by Chat Sports why I believe these are two very smart additions and why one of them can make an immediate impact as early as this coming week against the New York Giants. So like I said, two very smart signings. And I know we focused a lot on the negatives here, right? There's been a lot of talk about how porous the offense was, the execution, the game plan, the play calling. Listen, I totally get it. However, I think with these two recent additions by the Broncos, they are acknowledging their shortcomings. They are working to getting better and ultimately still believe that this is a team worthy of making a very deep playoff run by their recent moves. And that's why you hit subscribe. But not only that, for 365 days of full coverage, every time we post a video, every single video that goes out, you've got to have your notifications turned on. So hit that bell icon, select the all option, and you will never ever miss a time where YouTube posts right on your timeline and says, hey, Broncos Breakdown sent you a video. All right, let's talk about the signings. J.T. Gray is the first one, and he's probably the player on this list that's going to make the more immediate impact. He is technically a safety. However, he doesn't play a lot on defense. In fact, in his tenured career, he's basically just been a special teams ace, where I think a lot of Broncos fans can acknowledge, at least last game against the New York Jets, it wasn't very good. But he was an all-pro special teamer back in 2019, 2021, and last year in 2024. Now, he spent most recently with the Baltimore Ravens. That's the correct team. But spent the majority of his career with the New Orleans Saints under Broncos special teams coordinator Darren Rizzi. Here is what Broncos Wire had to say. At 6 foot, 202 pounds, Gray spent the first 7 years of his career in New Orleans, earning a Pro Bowl nod and a first-team All-Pro selection as a special teamer in 2021. This guy is damn good. He has also earned second-team All-Pro honors following the 2019 and last season in 2024. After missing the majority of training camp and preseason with a hamstring injury this summer, Gray is presumably healthy now. This is an excellent signing. An excellent signing. The Broncos, though, will have to make a corresponding 53-man roster move. I think you absolutely need to elevate J.T. Gray as a special teamer. With the likes of an injury of a guy like Jonah Ellis and having Q Robinson play a little bit more, you will see the depth pieces for the Broncos on defense start to showcase themselves more. But that also means that when you play more players on defense, you have to kind of limit their snap count elsewhere, meaning special teams. So why not get a certified veteran minimum all-pro caliber special teams player in J.T. Gray? And look, if you're looking at the numbers, these aren't, I mean, this is like fringe player in the NFL, right? Like, this is over a career. He's only got 103 tackles. But this doesn't count his special team stats. This is just his defensive stats. So you're getting a player that can be a gunner. You're getting a player that can understand the intricacies of what Darren Rizzi wants to do on special teams. And let's be completely honest, you got thrashed by the Jets on special teams. That was one area that I said throughout the game on our live watch party and after the fact. I said there was one area the Jets beat you in today, and it was special teams. Couple of kickoff returns. They were bad in coverage. It just didn't look completely buttoned up. Now, you can claim that that's because they were in London, jet lag, this, that, and the other. Fine. I'll give you the excuses that you want to get. But to me, these moves, and the second one we'll talk about coming up here in just a little bit, signify to me the Broncos are being proactive about fixing their mistakes, right? Like, we want to see this. We want to see where have we been deficient, where have we been not so good, and how can we add, subtract, or change what we're doing to correct those mistakes. That's what great teams do. And this, by the way, is an all-time defense. It is the best defense in the NFL. That's like an afterthought. This could be an all-time NFL defense. So now where do you have to make your adjustments? On the offensive side of the ball and on the special teams. All three phases need to be working in tandem to get a deep playoff run. So, do you like the J.T. Gray signing? Yes or no? I'm going to go one step further. I don't just like it. I love it. I think this is an exceptional move from Darren Rizzi, Sean Payton, and George Payton to sign this guy for basically nothing. Pennies on the dollar. And the only upside that you can get from him is an all-pro caliber. And guess what? If it doesn't work out and he stinks, no harm, no foul. So coming up next, the next smart signing Denver made. This next signing, not an immediate impact, somebody that will remain on the practice squad, but I think you could see elevation based off of the recent workouts the Broncos have done and the recent signing that just happened. You could see a change coming sooner rather than later on the offensive line. Now, before I do that, I got to tell you about my friends over at Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every single day. But on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. You don't want to miss any of the excitement this football season on Prize Picks, where it is good to be right. Did you know you can now follow other Prize Picks players directly on the app and copy their lineups in just one click? Whether it's a friend, a celebrity partner like producer Reed, or just someone whose picks you absolutely love, hit the follow button and check out every lineup they create in the brand new feed tab on Prize Picks. How does it work? How do you play? It's very simple. You pick the player. You pick the more or the less on their stat projections. You watch your money multiply. You could win up to 2,000 times your money this season on Prize Picks. Just download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Second one, Karsan Barnhart. That name probably sounds unfamiliar to you because it was unfamiliar to me until this morning. Karsan Barnhart was a practice squad swing offensive lineman. He plays a lot of different positions, or at least he did back in college when he played for the University of Michigan. But he's a player that was just signed to the practice squad recently, mostly because of the poor performance, who we'll talk about here in just a second, of Matt Parrott. But Mike Kliss was the first one on this. I think this is a really smart move. Even if he doesn't end up playing, it adds more depth and another player that can step in if we continue to see the poor performance from the backup rotational offensive lineman. Broncos Wire on this as well, saying Barnhart at 6'5", not 6'7", 6'7", 6'7", 316 pounds, was a versatile offensive lineman at Michigan, starting 9 games at left tackle, 2 at left guard, 3 at right guard, and 17 at right tackle. So that's his primary position. After winning a college football national championship with the Wolverines, Barnhart signed with the Los Angeles Chargers as an undrafted free agent in 2024. The Broncos now add him to their own practice squad, and this is an important thing to read, to shore up their growing guard depth. They also have guard Calvin Throckmorton on the practice squad, but he might be a candidate to get promoted to the 53-man roster. Do you see how this is a corresponding move? You can't roll with Matt Parrott. It was by far his worst game as a Bronco. It was horrendous. 3 penalties and a 29.4 PFF grade against the Jets. So the penalties don't even bake into that, producer Reed. They don't. The penalties are just a flat-out bad stat by themselves. You also were heavily penalized and had a poor performance on the field. That's like the double dose of suck. Like, that was awful. And he just clearly did not look nearly as comfortable at the guard position. He single-handedly cost the Broncos multiple drives with his penalties, with his poor performances. I mean, how many times did you see Bo Nix get absolutely flushed out of the pocket where he just has to dirt the football? It happened 2 or 3 times in the second half alone. And Parrott, while I won't say it's entirely his fault, was a main contributor in that fact. But remember, the Broncos have been proactive, because it wasn't just the signing of Karsan Barnhart. The Broncos also yesterday worked out, you guys remember who he is, Quinn Bailey, who played with the Broncos for the last couple of seasons and had that awful, brutal ankle injury. God, I'm trying to get my error's not coming up. In training camp last season. The Broncos are considering bringing him back. So with the poor performance to Matt Parrott, Ben Powers being out now until December, the Broncos know if we're going to compete for the division, if we're going to be the team that ends up winning the AFC West, if we want to make a Super Bowl and push forward in the playoffs, you've got to be shored up in every phase. And that is what they're doing. So I will tip my cap to Sean Payton and George Payton and the entire staff for acknowledging their issues and working to fix them. Here were the issues, by the way, that I noticed from an overarching takeaway. So if I had to summarize the 4 main problem areas against the Jets on Sunday, you got gashed on special teams all game long. Sign JT Gray, check. Number 2 coming in on our Broncos woes. Oh, there we go. I was going to say, did it not go? No, I was going to say, I was like, do we have a problem? Like, I didn't know if we had to pause or anything. You still have a serious penalty problem. That's not just against the Jets, though. That's against the entirety of the NFL. The Broncos they're a penalized team. I don't know if that's going to be fixable. Like, can you cut down on the penalties? Yes, of course. I don't know that this team will ever be a team that is just like a non-penalized team, right? Even the Jets only had 2, 3 penalties that entire game. The third takeaway was the offensive line played awful. Look, bad games happen. I'm not gonna say the Broncos have a bad offensive line. I'm not gonna sit here and spew BS to you about how the Broncos have a serious major problem for the offensive line. They don't. But what they did have was a very poor performance against a not very good team. In fact, most are calling the worst team in the NFL. And then, of course, something I'm not going to harp on, the questionable play calling. You know where I stand about that. But those were the 4 major problem areas against the New York Jets. And I do appreciate, like I said, not to beat a dead horse, but the acknowledgement of the issues and the working in tandem with your coaching staff to fix them. Because you do have one big, major neon sign ahead of this Denver Broncos team, and it says defense. 82 yards allowed against the Jets total. That was the 3rd best performance in franchise history, going back to 1960, the start of the Super Bowl era. The Denver Broncos just had their 3rd greatest yards allowed performance ever. If that doesn't explain to you why the Broncos currently sit at tied for the lead in the AFC West, and I know that someone's going to, technically they're not tied because the Chargers have the tiebreaker. Okay, fine. But they're both 4-2. Chargers are 4-2, Broncos are 4-2, Kansas City Chiefs are 3-3, and the Raiders are at the bottom of the barrel. But the Chiefs are coming. I told you guys, this is a team that maybe isn't a 15-2 team like last year, but this is a 10 or 11 win football team. They are starting to really pick it up. You can never count out Mahomes. You can never count out Andy Reid. So if you want to take control of the West, if you want to shore and solidify yourself as the very top of the division, you've got to make these corresponding moves because we all love Broncos football. We all want them to succeed. And we all know that if these moves are cleaned up, if the line is cleaned up, if the penalties and the play calling get cleaned up, this is a 12-13 win football team. That's going to do it for us on today's episode. A reminder to like the video if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And as always, Mile High Salute. Be cool.